When's school starting for you?
August 28th.
Oh, 28th? Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at the third passage from our test. Guys excited for tomorrow's test? See if you get 1550 now? You guys feel pretty comfortable with math now? Are you in high level physics?
No, standard. Standard.
All right, let's take a look at this passage. Okay, did you guys outline some passages? Did you? No? Okay. All right, so let's take a look. Rare woodland plant uses cryptic coloration. Okay, so this is probably something that we need to find out to hide from predators. Okay, so emphasis is probably here, to hide from predators. So this is them talking about a certain purpose here, right? So this is the purpose. They do this to hide from predators, okay? Well, yeah, we've read the passage and we know the focus is there, but it's even when you're reading just the title, before you start reading, you should be able to get this, okay? I mean, it's fine if you don't, but if you don't, you should still read with the mindset that you're going to define this and that you're going to be seeing this idea. So these two ideas are going to be the main thing, okay? So it started off saying it is well known. So remember yesterday we talked about those kinds of things, stuff that you need to look for, like some well-hidden details that are likely to be tested. So did scientists really, what did the scientists know, or what the scientists thought, and what they were wrong about, what they didn't know, and what scientists, the difference between scientists' speculation and their hypothesis, and whether it's actually well established. All right, so these are stuff that you should always look for, and also these plus qualifiers. So qualifiers meaning like some, most, all, right? Is it just talking about some, or is it talking about all of them? Are they talking about all species, or is it just some species, right? So so let's take a look at this passage. So starting off, it says well known. So what's the well-known fact? I'm gonna treat this as a person, right? I mean, like some kind of point of view. So what's the well-established fact? Some animal species use camouflage to hide from predators. So this is the idea that we saw in the title, right? But we're talking about animals here, and not all animals, but some animals, right? But we know that this passage is not about animals, it's about plants. So what is it trying to establish? It's probably trying to establish some kind of comparison. It's probably going to say, hey, just like animals, plants also use camouflage to hide from predators, right? So this is something that's well known, and individuals that are able to blend into their surroundings and avoid being eaten are able to survive longer, reproduce, and thus increase their fitness. Okay, so this is the implication of this, right? So you hide from predators using camouflage, and as a result, you get to do this. This is all the good stuff that happens. Right? So what do we talk about so far? Just well-known fact, right? What's well-known? animals use camouflage? Some. Right, so I know this passage is going to be about plants, but still we talked about animals, and then it says, well, it is a comparison. So I mean, you can just take like a little note to yourself, make a little note to yourself saying, hey, here is a comparison. Note to self, come back to this later if you're asked a question about this, right? This may seem like a good strategy, fairly common in the animal kingdom, but who ever heard of a plant doing the same thing? Okay, so it's just reintroducing the topic. I mean, introducing the topic here, this paragraph, right? So it's just telling us, hey, this is something animals do. Hey, but do you know that plants do it also, right? So fairly simple things. So we will probably hear in the body portion that plants will be using camouflage, right? They do use camouflage in order to hide from predators, right? So it's introducing that topic, saying, hey, we know this, but plants do the same. And this is going to be the focus of our passage. So we know, we're pretty set. So where can we go from here? Well, they can just explain it, quoting other scientists, but at the same time, we can have full-on studies. We can have experiments or stuff like that, right? Or we can have studies. I don't know what's going to happen, so let's just read on. What you don't want to spend too much time doing is spend time reading mechanisms. If we're talking about the nitty-gritties of how something happens, why the scientific mechanisms and that kind of thing, you can skip those parts, right? We're just looking for the general structure. Okay, if we get like a detailed question, we're going to get a line reference most likely with that, and then we can afford to come back. Okay, so now we're talking about plants, right? So when we're talking about plants, the use of coloration or pigmentation as a vital component of acquiring food or as a means of attracting pollinators has been well studied. Okay, so another well studied fact, right? We see here. What's the well-studied thing? Well, acquiring food and attracting pollinators. These are going to be the purposes for using camouflage. So they do these two things using camouflage, right? However, variation in pigmentation as a means of escaping predation has received little attention. Okay, so this is something. Okay, and then we have a study right away. Okay, so we have this person, MK from Harvard. Okay, MK from Harvard and colleagues empirically investigated whether the dried bracts. Okay, so we're using one specific type of plant, right? So dried bracts on a rare woodland plant, blah blah blah. MO might serve as a similar purpose. Right. Okay. So this is their process, right? So I don't really care about this part. I just want to jump to the results. But even then, I know the results, right? The results are probably going to be, yeah, they use this as a means. They use camouflage as a means of escaping predation, right? Blah 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 blah. Namely, to hide. This is what they were looking for. So starting from lines 16 to 21, I see the process here. MO is a fascinating plant species as it relies exclusively upon MF that associate with its roots for all the resources it needs to live. Okay, so now we're talking about this plant specifically, and so this part, what is it talking about? It's talking about the specific characterizations of characteristics of MO, right? So we have this paragraph dedicated to explaining what's so special about MO, right? So starting from line 22 to like 30, this is going to be about MO. Because the plant no longer requires photosynthetic pigmentation to produce its own energy, it is free to adapt a broader range of possibilities, okay? So we do not require we do not require PP. So PP is not necessary, right? PP not necessary, so we get a broader range. That's what we get, right? We get a broader range of possibilities. So MO does not require photosynthetic pigmentation. We don't need PP. We don't need PP, so broader possibilities. Okay, so let's go to the next part. It says, using a large population of MO, K and colleagues experimentally removed dried bracts. Okay, so this is going to be the process. I want to see where this ends. Measured the reflective pattern. So this is, we're still on the process, right? So I'm still gonna go, and then I see they indeed found that, okay? So this is going to be the important part. This is going to be the result, right? So what is the result? The bracts functioned as camouflage. So if we use, we were studying MO, and we came to the conclusion that bracts functioned as camouflage, right? So that's the result of our study. The result is bracts camouflage. The bract reflectance pattern closely resembled that of the leaf litter. Okay, so we have a comparison here, right? And both differed from that of the reproductive stem and flowers. So we see some comparisons here. So you should take note of that also. So you should tell yourself, hey, I see some comparisons here. I might not be able to, I mean, you don't necessarily have to spend much time trying to remember this or whatever, but you should at least make a note to yourself. Furthermore, they experimentally demonstrated that, okay, so we have another result, right? So what's that other result? This camouflage actually worked to hide the plant from its predators and increased its fitness, okay? So yeah, this isn't something new, right? I've been expecting this all this time. So I see result number 1, and then result number 2 is the fitness went up, and I mean, okay, I'll just say hide from predators. And the fitness went up. Individuals with intact bracts suffered only a quarter of the herbivore damage and produced a higher percentage. This is an elaboration on this result, right? So I can just say, hey, I see more results. It's in a little bit more detail. It has long been shown that animals, okay, so what's been shown? That animals use cryptic coloration. We know about this. We read this in the beginning, so I'm not going to do much about it. I'm just going to say, okay, so I've seen this idea as a defense mechanism to visually match, but we have now experimentally demonstrated that plants have evolved a similar strategy. Okay, yeah, okay. I mean, it's pretty repetitive, this passage, right? So we just say, hey, we know that animals do this, but do plants do it? And then he said, yeah, we do it. How did we know? We did that experiment, right? What do we go from here? Drying its bracts to hide its reproductive parts is a good strategy when the stems are, okay, so now we're talking about when it's a good strategy. When the stems are exposed to predators for long periods of time, okay? So when this is good when stems are exposed. So this is probably a fact that I need to remember because I'm done. I used up all my expectation here. Now I don't know where to go from here because this is what's been established in the very beginning. So this is very important, guys. You should be able to do this. You've been reading this passage with this expectation in mind, right? The plants use camouflage to hide from predators. That's the expectation you've been using up, right? So yeah, I knew that. And now we're done, okay? So where do we go after this? Now you need to read this part. This part is new information for you. So you should be able to delineate the different ideas here. So a good strategy when the stems are exposed and all the other species in the subfamily M have a colorful, fleshy bracts and are reproductively active for only a quarter of the length of time. Okay, so other species, right? Other species in the subfamily, they only do this for this time. But paradoxically, however, MO actually relies on animals for pollination and seed dispersal. Okay, so in order to better see this, I'm using a different color here, but you guys should be able to delineate all the ideas, different ideas here. So I'm not saying you need to remember all of these when you read it, but you should see the different points. How does it accomplish this when it is disguised as dead leaf material and is able to hide so well? Okay, so it asks us a question. So this is probably going to be pretty important. So what's the question? How do we do this when you're disguised as dead leaf, right? I mean, how do you use animals? Animals are just going to think you're dead, right? Authors hypothesize. Okay, so we have a hypothesis at the end. So this is something, so what's important in the last paragraph is we present a question, right? So this is all that we've been expecting. So I don't see anything out of the ordinary up until this point. But after that, the question is, yeah, they're kind of like dead leaf, but at the same time, they use animals for pollination, right? And the question was, how, right? How do we do this, right? So this was the question. And in order to answer this question, we had a hypothesis, right? What was the hypothesis? That the flowers emit highly fragrant odors. Okay, so it's the smell, right? It's the scent. To attract pollinators and seed dispersal agents. Indeed, they observed bumblebees finding and blah, blah, blah. They were entirely hidden. Even if they were hidden, they found it. So this is just supporting this odor thing, right? Okay, so I'm going to divide the passage like this. Because up until this point, what were we doing? We presented a phenomenon, and then what do we have? We have an experiment here, right? This experiment just confirmed this. That's it, right? And then after that, we have another question, and we answered that using a hypothesis, right? So that's the structure of the passage. You should be able to see this, right? It's not just looking at the words and understanding every individual sentence. It's about looking at the text structure and being able to identify that, okay? So let's take a look. I'm not going to take a look at the graph. I'm just going to go to the questions, okay? So the main purpose of the passage. So when it comes to the main purpose of the passage, something that needs to happen is I need to have this idea. The plants use camouflage in order to hide from predators. Predators. This is what I need, right? So this is what I need. I'm looking for this. So it says contrast, but I know the main point is not any kind of contrast, right? So I can get rid of that right away, right? B says explore the attempts of scientists. Okay, Well, this is something that scientists did. So, I mean, I'll let this go. I'll be very forgiving and let this go. To understand the means by which plants attract pollinators. Okay, so this was the last paragraph, right? For answer choice B. But this was not our main thing, remember? Our main thing is this part. And B is only mentioning this. This was kind of like an epilogue, right? So I don't really care about B. C says, describe a study illuminating a defensive strategy. So we have all this boiling down to this one idea of a particular species of plant. Yeah, there you go. Defense mechanism, well, this is also boiled down in this idea. And did we have a study? Yes. We had this study by MK or whatever that guy's name was. Explain the results of experiments. Okay, I mean, I'm not so fond of experiments, plural, but I'll just let it go. Comparing the function of color in plants, no, right? So we do not make this comparison. This passage is not about animals versus plants. We did have some kind of contrast, but the contrast between animals and plants was that animals using camouflage it's a well-established fact, but we don't know much about plants using camouflage, right? Okay, so that's it. What about 23? Which choice best supports the idea that, okay, so you should not get this question wrong. Why? Because it's merely a question of, it's just, you know, you're just basically locating the statement written here, and you're just physically locating that in the passage. So in the passage, there's going to be a rephrased version of this statement. So it's go back and identify a rephrased version. So it's not about thinking, okay? So you shouldn't be thinking in order to solve this question. It's just a matter of, hey, do I see all the elements? Do I see all the elements mentioned in this statement reflected in the passage? Do I see that in the line reference? So let's take a look. The ability of a species to use camouflage effectively can provide an evolutionary advantage. So this is probably, I mean, I would imagine this being fitness because I remember reading fitness here in the passage. So it's just going to be camouflage. Do we have plants here, or do we need to talk about plants? It's not necessarily about plants, right? Because we just said a species, right? So you don't need plants. The only thing that you need are these three things. You need species, you need them using camouflage, and then you should have this advantage, right? So there's a correlation between camouflage and fitness, right? So that's what you should be looking for. So lines 1 to 2, okay? So use camouflage. Okay, so camouflage is mentioned, but what about the evolutionary advantage? Do we see that in lines 1 to 2? No, right? What about B? What's the line number for B, Matt? 2 to 7. Okay, so individuals that are able, okay, individuals, so this is the species bit, right? Species that are able to blend into their surroundings and avoid blah, 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 reproduce. Okay, so this one, blend in their surroundings, this is probably going to be the camouflage bit, and then it says increase their fitness, so this is going to be talking about the evolutionary advantage. So we have all of that, so it's going to be B, right? So you should not get this question wrong. So did anybody get this question wrong? Okay, fine. Okay, good. 24, the passage indicates that compared with other functions of coloration in plants, camouflage in plants has, okay, so you should be able to, I mean, go back and locate the comparisons. Okay, so what's the comparison here? So it's between the functions. So there's other functions of coloration, and then we have camouflage. So can you find that in the passage? I mean, we've had several comparisons, and I've annotated all the comparisons, right? I just wrote COMP next to the comparisons. Where is that? So I'm looking for a comparison between other functions and camouflage.
Like around 10 to 15.
Okay, 10 to 15. Actually, we do not have a compare. We didn't actually. What is that? We didn't annotate the comparison here because I didn't see this as a comparison. But there is a contrast word here, right? However, so I could look for that. But the thing is, I would be better off looking for this in this case then. Other functions, so looking for other functions and versus camouflage. So that's what I'm looking for here, right? And we see this here, acquiring food, this, right? So this is well studied, right? But this is little attention. So this is the point of comparison, right? Between these two things. So this is our answer, right? So what am I going to go with? So I want to, my answer is going to be little attention, which is going to be D, right? Little attention, been the subject of a smaller number of scientific investigations, right? 20 to 21, the references to the tiger and moths serve mainly to, right? So I don't necessarily remember this because I might have skimmed over some of the parts. Let's take a look. Similar purpose, right? So it says similar purpose as the stripes on a tiger or the gray coloration of the wings of the moth, right? So this is a comparison, right? So we're saying we have a similar purpose. That's why I'm mentioning the tiger stripes and the moth colorations, right? So that's what I want. That's the point that I want to make, right? It's these are similar, right? Similar. So A says provide examples of animal species. So I'm looking for that similar thing with characteristics analogous. So I see it here, right? Animal species analogous to those of the plant. So this is okay. Offer a contrast. No, it's not a contrast. It's similar. So it's not contrast. Right? C, suggest a new possibility. Okay, I don't see that similar idea here. D, defend the work described in the passage against. Okay, we're not defending. I don't see that similar nature here. So that's why it would be A here. Okay, 26. Can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that the nutrient requirements of many plants have the consequence of. All right, so what is this asking for? Matt, what is this asking for?
It's asking, it's like an inference question. So it's asking, what does the possibility say?
Well, what about this? What if we see consequence?
Oh, you look for constant.
Yeah, we look for a cause and effect, but it's reasonably be inferred. So there might not be an overt, explicit cause and effect. But still, I'm looking for a cause and effect, right? So what are we looking for? We are looking for the cause, right? We are looking for the cause, potential cause, and the nutrient requirements of, no. Sorry, consequence of, so have the consequence of. So we're looking for the effect, right? So I'm looking for nutrient as a cause. Nutrient requirements is going to be our potential cause, and what's the potential effect that comes because of this. So if I go to the line reference, do I need to see nutritional requirements? Yes, of course, right? So you should look for that. So there's no reason why you should get this question wrong. We're simply looking for nutrient requirements in the line reference, okay? So I'm gonna try and do that. So let's go to 1621. I'm looking for nutrition. Nutrition. So 1621, no. Why? Because this is, I know, this is where this should come in handy. Because you have this whole bit annotated as process, right? 16 to 21. So your eyes should not go here. Like you don't even need to look at this because you know this is the process. I'm not looking, you don't see any kind of like nutrition related stuff here, right? So not this one. What's the next line reference? 22 to 25. So this is this guy talking as it relies exclusively upon MF. Okay, so this was talking about MF, but I don't see the nutritional requirement. So this one is gone also, right? So what about the next one? 25 to 30. All right, thanks. Because this plant no longer require... Oh, guess what? I have a because here, right? So because the plant no longer require photosynthetic pigmentation to produce its own energy. Oh, pigmentation to produce its own energy, right? So this is probably the nutrient requirements, right? It could be that, and I have this because here also. It is free to adopt a broader range of possibilities in coloration. So here we go. So this is our potential answer choice. So C, I'm going to leave. I'm not saying C is the answer just yet. And I might see other ones, right? I might see a better one. So what about D, Matthew? Sorry, last one. 31 to 34. All right, so this is the process. So I'm not going to look at this. So our answer is going to be C, right? So the nutrient requirements, right? They don't really have, they don't require photosynthetic pigmentation to the green coloration to produce its own energy. So it is free to adopt a broader range of possibilities in color. Broader range in color, that's our answer, right? Broader range in color, that's what I'm gonna be looking for then. Broader range of color. Oh, actually, no, I misunderstood the question. So it's saying the nutrient requirement, but, okay, so what we've read, okay, what we've read is saying we don't have that requirement, right? We don't have that, the statement that we've read is we don't have that requirement, so it's a broader range, right? Sorry. So, in other words, if we do have that requirement, if we do have that nutrient requirement, we will not have a broader range. We will have a more narrow range. We will have a narrower range. That should be our answer. So A says exaggerating the plant's coloration patterns. It would be the exact opposite of this. Limiting the plant's defensive options. Yeah. Well, okay, so why would it be limiting the plant's defensive options? Because it could only be green, right? It could only be green, and they can't be any other color, right? So this is actually, they reversed it. They reversed our statements, and they inferred further implication based on that, right? We can only remain in one color, so that's why it's going to be B, right? Who got this question wrong? Did you get it wrong? Yeah. Do you get it now? Yeah. Okay. So broader range, okay, this is actually the line that we just read, right? Broader range of color. Okay, so broader range of color, is that right? Is that the broader range of color line? Broader range of color. Yeah. So on one hand, we have it being green, and on the other hand, we have a broader range of color. So this one is not just green, but a broader range. So extensive range of color. So that's possible. It's not a matter of obvious and unpredictable. Tolerant, no. Spacious is just saying we have a lot of space. So that's not it. We need to be talking about a range of colors. So more extensive. So A would be right. Next one. Okay, worked. 48, worked. This camouflage worked to hide the plant. Okay, so this is what it's saying. Camouflage worked to hide plant from predator. All right, so did it change the plant? No, it's basically just, I guess, functioned. Right? Work used literally as it worked in order. It worked to hide. Okay, so influenced to hide. Influenced. Did the camouflage influence it to hide? Well, if influenced, if I use the word, did someone choose B here? Okay, influenced, after the word influence, I should have the object right after it, right? But meaning it's a transitive verb, right? Influenced, so I would need, the camouflage influenced the plants or something like that. But I don't have that, right? So it would be functioned here, right? Okay, so this is just looking at the figure. So this I don't think should be an issue, right? This kind of question. It's just, okay, you just need to look at figure 1 and you just need to find the elements here and this, check it at this, right? Which statement about reflectance patterns in MO is best supported by the data presented in figure 1? Okay, so this one, did anybody get this one wrong? Did you? Oh, you didn't check? Okay. Which one did you choose? Matt, which one did you choose? Yeah, so it should be D, right? And this one, it's just looking at figure 2, so this one shouldn't be difficult either. So this one, I'm just looking at herbivore damage, plants with intact bracts in 2007. So it's a little bit over 0.15. So B, right? Okay, good. Now let's go to the next passage. Was this history passage hard or no? It wasn't bad? Was it hard? Harder than the last one. Well, you wouldn't know that. Okay. So, take a look. Reflections on the revolution in France. When we talk about the French Revolution, what do we need to remember? You guys remember this? What are they going to usually say about the French Revolution? Are they going to say good things about it, or?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they usually when we have passages on the French Revolution, it's going to be neighboring countries. They're written by neighboring countries, and they're going to say, "Ah, we're so scared that that's happening over there," right? Because, you know, that would be bad. That, like, if that happens in our country, it would be chaos. It's disorder, right? You know, people shouldn't do that. That's how it's going to go, right? So let's take a look. Edmund Burke was a British politician. Okay, so the guy who's writing this he's British, right? So whenever it says us or something like that, it's going to refer to the Britons, right? In 1789, the French formed a new governmental body known as the National Assembly. So, okay, so this is something that we need to know. I mean, it's not like you guys need to remember this or anything, but for this passage, we need to know this. So they made the National Assembly, which is a new government for them, ushering in the tumultuous period of political and social change known as the French Revolution. Oh, okay. So this ushered in the French Revolution. So I mean, I don't need to know more than that. I'm just going to say this period was a very, it wasn't that peaceful. It was pretty unstable and that kind of thing, right? Okay, so let's take a look. To make a government requires no great prudence. So it's saying we do not require prudence. Prudence is not a requirement for a government, right? So so we do not need this, right? It's not a necessary thing, right? So even if we don't have prudence, we can still make a government. So it's relatively easy, is what it's trying to say. Settle the seat of power, teach obedience, and the work is done. Oh, okay. So he's just saying, hey, you just need to make sure the power is working, and you need to just make people obey. That's it. Just get in power, make people obey, and there you have. It's a government. There you have your government, right? Okay. To give freedom is still more easy. Okay. So he's saying government does not require prudence. Freedom, this is also easy, right? So it is not necessary to guide. All right. So we don't need guidance, right? It's not necessary. It only requires to let go the rein. Oh, so it's saying in order to get freedom, you don't need guide. You don't need to guide people. You just let them go, whatever, right? So these two ideas here. So these are the two ideas. Making a government, no big deal. Giving people freedom, no big deal, right? Easy. What about the next one? But, all right, here we go. But to form a free government. Oh, okay. So that's probably going to be our next idea. So in order to make a free government, so in order for us to have both of these though, that is to temper together these opposite elements of liberty and restraint. Okay, so he's elaborating on what a free government is because he says that is, right? So what's the definition of a free government? It's liberty and restraint put together, right? So when we have a free government, it's liberty, but at the same time, restraint, right? So pretty paradoxical, right? You need to restrain people, but at the same time, you should grant them liberty. Is what? In one consistent work, requires much thought, deep reflection. Oh, okay, so this one is difficult, right? So these two, he's kind of implying that these are the very easy and or simple ones, but this one is relatively more difficult. Right? Okay, so what do you need? You need deep reflection, sagacious meaning wise, powerful, and combining mind, right? So you need a lot of thought, wisdom, and reflection. So all of these are necessary. Sorry. And then it says this. Okay, so what does this refer to then? I see your eyes wandering all over the place. What does this refer to?
Thought, deep reflection,
Hmm?
thought, deep reflection, solutions, and topic.
Sagacious, powerful, and combining mind, right? So, I mean, you're just looking for a singular noun, right? So when you look for a singular noun, it's mind, right? So this mind is what? Sagacious, powerful, and combining mind. And that I do not find in those. Oh, okay. So some people lack it, right? So who lacks this? Who lacks this mind? Who take the lead in the National Assembly? Oh, dissing them, right? So he's saying, hey, in order to make a free government, you need this. But the people in the National Assembly, they don't have this, right? So that's the National Assembly. They don't have that requirement. This is the requirement, right? But they don't have this requirement. So can they make a free government? No, right? So contrapositive, right? So we need this, but they don't have this. So they can't make a free government, right? Perhaps they are not so, who's they? Yeah, those, right? Those, okay? So those are not so miserably deficient as they appear. Okay, so this is an expectation versus reality, right? I mean, appearance versus essence, or something like that, right? So they appear how? They appear deficient, right? They appear stupid. What is he saying? Well, maybe they're not so dumb as they look like, right? And then he says, I rather believe it. Oh, so he's saying, you know, is he really saying that he doesn't think there's dumb? No, he's actually saying, yeah, they look really dumb, right? They look pretty deficient in what they do, right? So he says the National Assembly doesn't satisfy this requirement. And another thing is they appear deficient, right? So they appear to be deficient, but I really hope to God, they're not as dumb as they look, right? But probably, right? I rather believe it. It would put them below the common level of human understanding. Oh, right? So they're below the level of human understanding. They're really, really bad, right? Really, really deficient. But when the leaders choose to make themselves bidders at an auction of popularity. What's an auction? You guys know what an auction is? What's an auction? Do you know what an auction is? What do you do at an auction?
So what happens is that there's like a group of people, and they set certain prices for a product, and they keep raising the price like the value of that product keeps rising as the people keep bidding, they keep naming that the price of the product they're willing to pay.
Yeah. So people, I mean, if you go to an auction house, the auction house gets like a commission from whoever's trying to sell a product, right? Let's say you have some artwork that's really valuable. Can you go around like, do you go around telling people, hey, I have this painting, do you want to buy? No, it's really hard. So you just go to an auction house and they sell it for you. How do they sell it for you? Wait, they have a starting price, right? You've seen this in movies, right? So they say, hey, okay, so so for this artwork, we're gonna start at $100,000. Does anybody want to buy this at $100,000? And then someone raises their thing, right? They bid. That means, okay, I'm up to that. I will buy it at 100,000. And then they say, oh, okay, so since we have 100,000, what about 110? Does anybody want to buy it at 110? And then another person raises their picket or something like that. That's what it is. But, okay, so think about that. Leaders choose to make themselves bidders. So the bidders are who? The people who are raising their thing, right? They wanna, they're trying to bid for something, but they're not actually trying to buy something. They're trying to win popularity. They're trying to win popularity. Their talents in the construction of the state will be of no service. Okay, so do you know? So do you get that idea? Like what they want is popularity, right? So what's being sold is popularity being sold, and they're saying, hey, who wants my vote? Who can give me liberty? Hey, who can eliminate all the taxes? And then the politicians say, hey, I'll do it, right? That's basically what it is, right? So just giving people what they want just to win their popularity, right? That's going to be no service, right? So that's the analogy he uses. So just going for popularity. If popularity is your goal, right? Then you're going to be useless. You're not going to be like a useful politician. They will become flatterers instead of legislators. Okay, so this is the contrast that he makes here, right? Legislators is what? 국회의원, right? So lawmakers. So this is what you want. Is this what you want? Flatterers? People who just flatter the public? No. But he's saying, if you're going for popularity, you're just going to be a flatterer, right? You're not going to be a legislator. You're not going to be a proper legislator. The instruments, not the guides, right? So again, so you see all these contrasts here, right? Flatterers, not legislators. Instruments, not the guides. What does he think is, this is what's desirable. The blue is the desirable one, right? But what do we actually get? This is the consequence. If you go for popularity, this is the consequence. You get the yellow, right? Right? If any of them should happen to propose a scheme of liberty, soberly limited and defined with proper qualifications, he will immediately be outbid by his competitors who will produce something more splendidly popular. So he explains it here, right? So if someone says, hey, I'll give you guys liberty, why don't you vote for me? And then another person says, hey, I'll give you guys liberty plus this, why don't you vote for me, right? Then that becomes, it becomes this. Flatters instead of legislators, instruments, not the guides. People just use them, right? You guys get that idea, right? So it's trying to get this. And here we have a lot of contrasting ideas. So what's the contrast? Let's just write one thing. Flatterer, not legislator, right? Suspicions will be raised of his fidelity to his cause. Okay, so we will have suspicions. Okay, so what does fidelity mean? Hello? Loyalty, right? So, people are going to say, hey, does he actually care about his cause, right? Does he actually care about his country? Does he actually care about the well-being of his country? He's just like bidding at an auction of popularity, right? That's going to be the consequence, he's saying, right? Moderation will be stigmatized. What does stigmatize mean? It's putting on a label on something, right? This is actually, I think this is like, if you just label something or you just stigmatize something, in modern society, that becomes like becomes the bottom line. It's just end of discussion right there. Let's say, for example, okay, I don't know. For example, someone says, someone's trying to make an argument. Someone's trying to make an argument that is a little bit slanted towards the right side, like in the States. And someone says, hey, they're actually making a case about like abortion or whatever. And then they're making their argument and someone asks them, hey, are you going to vote for Trump then? And then he says, yeah. And then the other guy says, oh, he's a Trump supporter. And then as soon as he gets labeled, it's the end of the discussion. They don't have any kind of thoughtful discussion after that, once you label someone that. Well, that's not what this is trying to say, but that's just my opinion. But anyway, I'm not saying I'm a Trump supporter, by the way. I'm just that was just an example. So he's saying moderation is going to be labeled as the virtue of cowards. Is this desirable? Is moderation desirable? For him?
Yes.
Is this something that he describes as desirable? Yeah, right? But so is this a good thing? If people say, hey, moderation's for cowards, is that a good thing? No. So he's talking about all the negative consequences that will happen once, people just go for popularity. If the politicians start going for popularity, all of these bad things will happen, and the negative consequences are these. Suspicions will have suspicions, and people are going to they're going to laugh at moderation, although moderation is desirable. So those are the negative. So I'm going to say, let's say we have some negative consequences. So what are the negative consequences? For one, I'm going to say there's going to be suspicions, right? And number two, moderation is going to be laughed at. People will not want moderation, right? They would want to go all the way. And compromise as the prudence of traitors. He thinks compromise is necessary, like that's implied here. But he's saying people are going to think compromises for traitors. That's also going to be shunned from the people, right? In hopes of preserving the credit which may enable him to temper and moderate, on some occasions the popular leader is obliged to become active in propagating doctrines and establishing powers that will afterwards defeat any sober purpose, right? So the popular leader will be forced to defeat sober purposes. That's what they're going to work in this way, right? Sober purpose being anything that's worth fighting for, right? Something that's not drunk, something that's woke, right? So he's saying these are the negative consequences, right? You see this? These are all the negative consequences of this. Good? Good so far? Okay, next part. But am I so unreasonable to see nothing at all that deserves immediate, that deserves commendation and the indefatigable labors of this assembly. Okay, so he's saying, hey, do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm really unreasonable when I don't see anything that deserves commendation? Commendation being praise, right? So I don't see anything good about this, right? Am I crazy when I say I don't see anything good in this? I do not deny that among an infinite. Okay, so I do not deny that. So it sounds like there's going to be concession. I do not deny. Well, I won't deny this, right? So it sounds like, you guys do have a point. There is this point, right? So so we're still talking about the National Assembly, and he's saying, I don't really see any positives about this, but he makes a concession first. So what is that concession? Among an infinite number of acts of violence and folly, some good may have been done. Okay, so I'm just going to say the concession is some good, right? So there are some good things that have happened. Yeah, there was some good, right? They who destroy everything certainly will remove some grievance. Oh, but this is like his counter argument right away, right? What's grievance?
It's like
Complaint. Okay, grievance, complaint. Okay. Do you guys get this point? Those who destroy everything will certainly remove some grievance. Do you get that point? What does that mean?
It means you're basically wiping the slate kind of clean, but then you still leave some stain marks.
No.
What?
No. What he's trying to say is, yeah, if you destroy everything, yeah, of course you will do some good. That's what he's saying. So let's say there's this cockroach right here, okay? That's and you're gonna have a grievance, right? You're gonna have a complaint. Hey, Daniel, there's a cockroach here, and then I say, okay, fine. I burn down the entire building, okay? And then you say, hey, and I ask you, hey, I did good, right? And then you say, yeah, I mean, if you destroy everything, you're going to get rid of some grievances. That's what he means. Do you get it?
Yeah.
The cost is way too big, right? I mean, yeah, fine. If you're resetting the whole thing, you will get rid of some grievances. But everyone can do that, right? They who make everything new have a chance that they may establish something beneficial, right? So it's not like they did anything so wonderful. It's just that they're just refreshing everything, renewing everything. So there's going to be something that's beneficial, something that's good, right? So it's really not something commendable, right? It's not really praiseworthy. To give them credit for what they have done in virtue of the authority they have usurped. Okay, so to give them credit means to give them praise, right? Or which can excuse them in the crimes by which that authority has been acquired. It must appear that the same things could not have been accomplished without producing such a revolution. Okay, so it might appear this way. It might appear that a revolution was necessary, right? Because the word without, right? So he's saying, hey, yeah, it might look like you guys needed a revolution, but, Actually, we didn't need a revolution. That's what he's implying here, right? The revolution is essentially wiping everything out and it's burning the hagwon down to kill one cockroach, right? And he's saying it's, that's, yeah, of course you're going to kill the cockroach if you do that. That's what he's saying. Most assuredly they might. Some usages have been abolished on just grounds. Yeah, so he's saying, yeah, there were some that were justifiable, but they were such that if they had stood as they were to all eternity, they would little detract from the happiness and prosperity of any state. Okay. So some usages, meaning probably some faults of the state, yeah, you got rid of, and that's justifiable. But even if we had it, it wouldn't detract. It wouldn't take away anything from our happiness. We could have lived with those faults. That's what he's saying, right? So, he's just saying, it's not worth it, what you guys did, right? It's not really yeah, you will do some good if you burn down the entire building. The improvements of the National Assembly are superficial, their errors fundamental. Okay, so that seems to sum up the whole point pretty well, right? So improvements are only superficial. So they didn't actually fix the root cause of the problem or anything, and they just have fundamental errors. Oh, why does it feel like this passage is so long? Okay, let's take a quick break before we finish this passage, okay? So let's take a break and we'll come back. Okay. So, what we have so far, okay? So, making a government, easy. Freedom, granting freedom, easy. Making a free government, though, it's difficult. What about these people? They don't satisfy that requirement. They suck. They're deficient, right? When you do this, when you're going for popularity, you have all these negative consequences, right? Yeah, they did some good, but if you burn down the entire house, you know, that's you're gonna produce some good. That's what it's saying. And you know, their improvements only superficial, their errors are fundamental. That's what we have so far. Okay, so let's take a look here. Whatever they are, I wish my countrymen rather. Okay, so this is what he wishes. This is gonna be probably his main point, like his bottom line. So yeah, he bashed the National Assembly of France or whatever. He said those are all bad. But you know, what does he want? He wants British people to do what? Rather to recommend to our neighbors the example of the British Constitution, right? So our neighbors being our neighboring countries, right? So I want British people to recommend to neighboring countries what? The British Constitution. So he's saying, hey, you know, just tell people to do this. Rather than do what? Rather than take models from them, right? So don't learn from other people, teach people ours, right? Ours is good, ours is better, right? So he's saying this, do not take models from them to improve ours, right? Don't take examples from the French, that's what he's saying, right? In the former, okay, the former being, the former, they have got an invaluable treasure. The former being the British Constitution, right? So when it comes to the British Constitution, we have an invaluable treasure. Okay, so his next point is going to be British Constitution. Constitution, this is good. That's what he's saying. This is really good. So recommend this. We have an invaluable treasure here. They are not, I think, without some causes of apprehension. Okay, so we do have some worries, right? And complaints. So he's saying it's not perfect, right? It's not necessarily perfect, but we should recommend this. But these do not owe to their constitution, but to their own conduct. Oh, so it's not because of the constitution, but it's because they acted wrongly, right? I think our happy situation owing to our constitution, meaning I think our happy situation is because of our constitution, right? So our situation because of the constitution, but owing to the whole of it and not to any part singly. Singly meaning what? Single, right? Like singularly, so not it's not because of any part, but it's because of the whole constitution, right? Our constitution as a whole, it has value, right? It's not just one part that has a beneficial impact. Owing in a great measure to what we have left standing in our several reviews and reformations, as well as to what we have altered or super added, right? So we did all the reviews, we did some reformations, and we altered and we added stuff, and the whole is good right now. Our people will find employment enough for a truly, find employment meaning find use, right? So we will find use for a truly patriotic, free, and independent spirit in guarding what they possess from violation. Okay, so this will be useful. Independent spirit in guarding what they possess from violation, right? I would not exclude alteration neither. Okay, so he's saying, yeah, we can change it. Like, I'm not thinking about the possibility of changing it. So alteration, yeah, we could potentially do it. But even when I changed, but even when it changed, I guess, even when it changed, it should be to preserve, right? Okay, so he's saying, yeah, alteration is okay, as long as it is to preserve, right? So this is what he thinks is important, right? He wants to change, not just for the sake of changing, but he wants to preserve it, right? So if the purpose is to preserve the Constitution and we're changing it in order to preserve it, it's okay. I should be led to my remedy by a great grievance. In what I did, I should follow the example of our ancestors. So this is something that he deems is good, right? So he likes the examples of his ancestors. I would make the reparation as nearly as possible in the style of the building. Okay, so what does it mean in the style of the building? Sorry. This voice recognition thing, it just randomly turns on. So, what does it mean, make the reparation? Reparation being changing it, right? Repairing it. So, in the style of a building. What does it mean in the style of a building? A politic caution, a guarded circumspection, a moral, rather than a complexion of timidity, were among the ruling principles of our forefathers in their most decided conduct. Okay, so it's being really careful, right? So, in the style of the building, meaning that's how it was made, right? That's the style of how our Constitution was built was a politic caution. They were really careful when they were building it. When they were making the foundations of our Constitution, it's not just, like it's not just like a timidity. It's not, they gave it much thought. They thought about it a lot and that kind of thing. Not being illuminated with the light of which the gentlemen of France tell us they have got so abundant a share, they acted under a strong impression of the ignorance and fallibility of mankind. So this they took into consideration, right? So he's saying, so let's talk about what their ancestors did, right? Let's talk about the foundations. So when we're talking about the foundations, there was a politic caution, right? So they were pretty careful when they were doing this. And another thing that they were doing was they recognized that man was fallible, that men could be ignorant. So ignorance taken into account. He that had made them thus fallible rewarded them for having in their conduct attended to their nature. So he made them thus fallible, rewarded them. Okay, so that had a positive impact for having in their conduct attended to their nature of the Constitution. Let us imitate their caution. Okay, so he's ending with this prescription. So he's saying, hey, let's follow in our ancestors' footsteps, right? Let's not do what the French people are doing, right? Let's not burn down the whole house. Let's be careful and keep our foundations, right? Let us add if we please, but let us preserve, right? So he's saying, yeah, I mean, we can add stuff, right? But let's not just, burn down everything and start all over again. We shouldn't do that, right? Blah, blah, blah. Let us be satisfied to admire rather than attempt to follow in their desperate flights of the aeronauts of France, right? So he's saying, yeah, these people, they're just making like a desperate flight, right? They're just running from their problems, right? Let's not do what the French did. Let's do what our ancestors did. So that's a contrasting idea in the last part, right? People in France versus their ancestors. Let's follow in their footsteps, right? Okay, so any questions on this passage? Okay, let's go to the questions. 33. Can reasonably be inferred from the passage that Burke is particularly upset with the National Assembly's decision too. Okay, so what's I mean, what's something that he bashed? So this is the first part where the national. Okay, guys, look here. Okay, okay, just don't. Just look at the board. If you need to write down something, write it down. But like this was what I was talking about right now. Okay, so the National Assembly is mentioned first here, right? This is the National Assembly, and then he makes certain points about this, right? And then we have all the points here. So what was he particularly upset about? He was upset that they were doing this. They were going for popularity, and he was also upset about this, right? So these are the possible two answer choices that I'm gonna go for, right? So this is completely irrelevant. We don't have this. Expand the size of the government. No, we don't have that at all. I don't. It's one of those two. So this is popularity, right? So this is probably our answer. Ignore the advice. No. They don't have any of that. These are all not mentioned. The only thing that is mentioned is they made it into an auction of popularity, and that's going to have these negative consequences. So that's why it's C. So where is that? So I need to find a part where that popularity is mentioned. Okay. So where do I see that? Let's take a look. So it's starting from like here. When the leaders choose to make themselves bidders at an auction of popularity. So somewhere along these lines, right? So this is what I should be looking for here, which is C here, right? So 13 to 18. Instruments. Okay, so let's take a look. They will become flatters instead. Okay, so remember this. We had the contrasting ideas. Instrument, not the guides. So instrument is opposed to guides, right? So instead of guiding people, the legislators are going to become instruments. So instead of being the guides, they will be tools. It's not them determining where to go. It's the people determining where to go, and they're just using the politicians. So that's why it's B. Based on the passage, Burke believes that French leaders who would advocate moderate positions. Okay, I think I remember this. Okay, moderate. It was mentioned here, right? So he's saying moderation, right? Moderate positions are going to be shunned, right? They're going to be looked down upon, right? And that's what he doesn't want. So brave, cowardly, virtuous, sensible. So I'm only going to leave the positive connotations because the author thinks moderation is desirable, right? The author thinks moderation is desirable, but when he was talking about the negative consequences of making it a popularity contest was that moderation will be looked down upon, right? But are likely to be distrusted. All right, so this is possible, but are likely to be ignored. All right, this is possible, but are likely to be undermined. This is possible. Okay, so what should I do? I should go back and check it, right? That exact part, and I want to see the exact words. Moderation. Okay, so I want to look for that negative consequence bit, right? Negative consequence. Moderation will be stigmatized as the virtue of cowards. Right? So this is key, right? Stigmatized as a virtue of cowards. That's going to be the second part of the answer. Okay, so stigmatized as virtue of cowards. Okay, so if I'm saying, hey, that's so cowardly, am I distrusting it? Well, no, not exactly. It's not a matter of trusting and not trusting. It's a matter of just saying, hey, that's so cowardly, right? It's not a matter of being praised. Oh, well, no. This is just completely wrong. It's not a matter of ignoring it. Actually, it's far from ignoring it because they're actually addressing it, right? So it's this. likely to be undermined, right? It's undermined being, it's going to be attacked, right? This is attacking them, right? Hey, that's for cowards. That's attacking it. It's not ignoring someone. If you say, hey, that's like a coward. Hey, you're a coward. Are you ignoring that person? Well, no, you're addressing that person. It's not ignoring it, right? Did someone get this question wrong? Okay. Which one did you choose? Okay. All right, sober. All right, so sober in line 30. Let's take a look here. They will defeat any sober purpose. So this is something that's desirable, right? Something that's a purpose that that is worthy, right? It's not a drunk purpose. It's a pretty admirable, probably like a sensible purpose, right? So reasonable would be our answer. Burke's central claim in the last paragraph is that the British have, okay, so in the last paragraph, what does he talk about? He talks about the French, and he also talks about our ancestors, right? And he says our ancestors were wise, right? This is what's desirable. This is not what's desirable. And we should try to, we can add stuff to our Constitution, but let's not burn it down to the ground and start all over again. Let's not do that. Fail to take, no. Fail to take it, no, he's not saying they failed to do anything yet. They didn't do anything bad. He's just saying, let's not follow the French's example. Acted wisely to revise rather than replace. Yeah, this is exactly something that he would advocate, right? Revise, not replace. So this is okay. Try to export. No, he's not saying they tried to do it. He's saying we should do it. So it's not this part. Let their government essentially unchanged. No, he did say we can change it a little bit, right? But the important thing is to preserve it. But we should add and change it, not necessarily get rid of it and try all over again. So B is the right answer. Burke refers to the repair of a building to make the point that, okay, so he was talking about like the very foundational ones again, right? So the foundations of the British Constitution, right? So he's saying, yeah, we should keep the building part, right? We should keep the underpinnings. So alteration is okay, and then we should keep this with this part, right? So A says, need to be changed periodically? No. He's not saying we need to change it periodically. We should preserve is what he's trying to say. If a government has fundamental errors, it should be replaced. He would never advocate replacing it. C, all government have flaws that may be corrected with the proper intervention. Well, no, he would agree with this, but he wasn't necessarily saying that when he was saying repair of a building, right? What he was saying was changes to a government should maintain that government's essential properties, right? This goes along with the idea of him saying it was to preserve, right? D. So 40, Burke displays the greatest respect for which of the following? Okay, so I mean this one should be pretty easy once you just look through the answer choices, right? So is it the public? Is it the British leaders of the past? British citizens, leaders of what? Not France, right? So but he didn't necessarily say anything about the public. He did say about our ancestors, and he showed great respect to them. So it's probably going to be B here, right? Of course, he doesn't want them to be inspired by the French. So C is obviously wrong. B is the right answer choice. And I have a line reference question. So I'm looking for this. Our ancestors. Something that could potentially have British leaders of past generation. So I'm just going to look starting from D. Why? Because I know this is going to be towards the end of the passage. It's not necessarily going to be in like 52 to 56. It's probably going to be somewhere towards the end. So 81 to 84 says, let us imitate their caution. Okay, so their caution. So this is referring to those people. well, no, 81. Imitate their caution if we wish to. Let us add, but let us what they. So yeah, this is the part where he talks about our ancestors, right? So this should be our answer. All right, Burke's attitude toward the gentlemen of France would best be described as, okay, so 67, I mean, I know that he has a negative attitude towards them, right? Wait, gentlemen, 76. Gentlemen of France. What does he think about gentlemen of France? I mean, like, here the idea is mentioned again. He calls them desperate, right? He calls them desperate, and I mean this bit is all about the ancestors, so I don't really know, right? I don't really know anything about that except they're pretty desperate, right? So he doesn't look at them in a positive light. So let's take a look. So A says scornful. It's possible. I mean, it's pretty strong. It's pretty strong, but I mean, I'm not sure. It has a negative connotation, so let's just let it go. Of course he's not sympathetic. Of course he's not envious, right? Apprehensive. Does he worry for them? No. It's not necessarily him worrying for them. He's like, hey, let's not really do that. Let's not follow in their desperate footsteps, right? So he's just looking down on them. It's rather condescending. So A would be the best answer here. Okay, any questions on that passage that we just did? Okay. Okay, blast in the past. Okay, so is saying, hey, was there a blast in the past? That's the sense that I get from here. Was there a blast? Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, my guess might be wrong, but I'm just making wild guesses here. Passage 2 says, what caused a 1300-year deep freeze? Okay, so it's talking about the cause, right? So this is a what passage, probably. It's going to focus on what caused DF. What caused the deep freeze? I don't know what the deep freeze is, but okay. So this is the background that we need to understand. Clovis hunters are widely regarded as among the first people to inhabit North America. Okay, so CH, they're the first people in North America, right? This is the idea that I have. Okay, so let's take a look at passage 1. So I mean, I don't know why it's talking about like the like people when it's talking about a blast. It's talking about a freeze. I don't get it. Okay, so I don't know where this passage is going to go, which means that I need to pay close attention in the beginning until I get a sense of the passage, until I build that sense of expectation. Once I build that sense of expectation, I can start moving faster. But for now, I'm just going to focus on getting all the, outlining everything. At the 2007 American Geophysical Union's meeting in blah, 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 some 24 scientists presented multiple studies. Okay, so we have multiple studies in 2007 arguing that, okay, so this is arguing that is going to be a significance, right? So this is the significance of multiple studies. That a comet or asteroid exploded above or on the northern ice cap almost 13,000 years ago. I thought this was a typo. Well, anyway, 13,000 years ago, showering debris across the North American continent and causing temperatures to plunge for the next millennium. Okay, so in the very beginning, I have something called multiple studies. what did the multiple studies say? Okay, so something C or A exploded, right? And then showering debris across the blah, 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 and causing temperature to drop. And then this thing lasted for a millennium. Right? So that's pretty much it, right? Okay, so that I guess refers to that blast mentioned in the title, right? That explosion, comet or asteroid explosion. And then it says the team argues that its idea explains multiple observations. So it explains this, not only the climate cooling and the disappearance of the Clovis hunters, but also the near simultaneous extinction of the continent's large mammals. Okay, so not only, but also, right? So what's the more important thing? What does he really want to emphasize here? It's after, but also, right? So what we need to focus here is the extinction, right? Near simultaneous extinction of the mammals, right? Okay, so based on this, what we want to argue, and not what we want to argue, what they kind of suggest based on this is extinction of mammals. So this is what he mentions, right? Okay, so the climate cooling, it was mentioned, and the Clovis hunters also disappeared. So I mean, I'll just Clovis hunter disappearance plus temperature drop. So we have all this, but the important thing is this. Not all will be convinced. Okay, very simple, right? So this is what multiple studies suggested in 2007, but it's not like everyone agrees, right? And notice how it used the word argues, and it didn't necessarily say proved or anything, right? So these are all just, I wouldn't say guesses because they're hypotheses, right? So that kind of thing. Not all will be convinced. Okay, so who is not convinced? Several leading hypotheses. Okay, so there's going to be several. So you need to get ready to number them. Okay, so if you didn't number them when you were reading them, you should, because I mean it said several. It's not going to lie to you. It's not going to say several and then just mention one. So you want to organize the passage as neatly as possible. So I'm going to be seeing several hypotheses. I want to number them. Already explain each of these three events. Okay, so several they explain this, right? A change in ocean circulation. I guess this is the first hypothesis, right? Change in ocean circulation is generally thought to have brought about the onset of the millennium-long cooling, which is the YD. Oh, okay, so good. We have a name for the cooling, right? We have a name for the cooling. This thing, let's say this is YD, right? And then, so we have multiple studies, but we have something that go against multiple studies. So I'm just going to say these are several leading hypotheses, right? So there's going to be several leading hypotheses, but number one is going to be ocean circulation. Ocean circulation actually caused, right, YD. That's our first thing. This cooling might in turn, okay, in turn means consequently, right? So this in turn and next, right, have caused the Clovis hunters to disappear. So this CH disappearance. And if they had not previously been killed by disease or hunted to extinction, the big historic beasts may also have been doomed by this change in climate. Okay, so because of this change in climate, the large mammals also decreased. Well, not decreased, let's just say they. Okay, so it says ocean circulation explains all of this, right? So ocean circulation brought about the lowering of the temperature, the millennium-long drop in temperature, and then this caused these two extinctions, right? And then the new evidence comes in the form of geochemical analysis. So, we look at geochemical analysis, which is the process, right? Blah, 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 North America, 9 of them Clovis, certain features of the layers, say the team, suggest that, okay, so here's the significance. They contain debris formed by an extraterrestrial impact, okay? So the new, well, wait. Okay, so this, we're actually going back to this idea, right? That the explosion idea, right? So the explosion idea, we're elaborating on this. Make sure you're not confused with this, right? This one, the new evidence suggests, the significance here is debris. We saw some debris by extraterrestrial impact. These include blah, 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 said to be too high to have originated on Earth. So it's saying, yeah, these can't be from Earth. In addition, the rock contains, okay, so I guess these are the two reasons supporting this extraterrestrial impact, right? Oh, that's it? Okay, I guess they actually did say several leading hypotheses, and then they only mentioned one of them, right? Okay, so we do have some other hypotheses going against this belief, but this passage just described the extraterrestrial impact, and then studies that go against it, and then it just described the new evidence, right? New evidence. Okay, so let's go to passage 2. Proponents of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Okay, so I'm interested as to which hypothesis this is. Is it about is it the ocean circulation one that we know about, or is this the ET one? I mean, I'm pretty sure because of the name impact, it's going to be that ET thing, extraterrestrial thing, but let's take a look. Have claimed various kinds of evidence for the hypothesis, including the deposits of iridium and microscopic diamonds. So these are their evidence, right? These are their evidence suggesting this. And magnetic particles and deposits at sites supposedly dated to 12,800 years ago. These claims were sharply contested by some specialists. Okay, so there's the YD hypothesis people, right? And then we describe some evidence for this, right? So the evidence is here from like line 35 to like line 41. But there were some specialists who contested this, right? They attacked this. In the relevant fields, however, who either did not detect such evidence or argued that the deposits had other causes than a cosmic impact. Oh, okay. So I know that this is the one that says cosmic impact. So this is the one that we mentioned in passage 1, right? The cosmic impact one, the asteroid or comet exploding and that kind of thing, right? For example, some say that nanodiamonds are common in ordinary geological formations, and that magnetic particles can come from ordinary fires, right? So, okay, so this is the counter argument to them, right? So these people say the evidence has to do with foreign material. I'm kind of heavily paraphrasing, right? But what do these people say? They say the foreign material is not foreign, right? Okay, so let's go to the next part. Now comes what some researchers consider the strongest attack yet. Okay, so I'm going to box the strongest attack, right? Okay, so we see these people attacking, but I have one more thing. The strongest attack on the YD hypothesis. In a paper published recently, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I see this guy named DM, and he looks at the dating of 29 different sites. Okay, so this is the process in which impact advocates have reported evidence for a cosmic collision. They include sites, okay, so here, we're still on the process. They include sites in which sophisticated stone projectiles called Clovis points, used by some of the earliest Americans to hunt mammals beginning blah, 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 have been found. The team argues that, all right, here we go. When the quality and accuracy of the dating is examined closely, only 3 of the 29 sites actually fall within the time frame of the Younger Dryas onset. Okay, so yeah, this is the strongest attack. And then what do I have from here? Number 1, 3 out of 29 are possible, right? So he's saying, yeah, you guys mentioned 29 sites, but 26 of them don't actually work because it didn't happen in the same time frame, right? He's saying only 3 of them work, right? About the rest were probably either earlier or later by hundreds of years, right? So in other words, 26 not during that time, right? So what is it talking about? Like, this is talking about the collision sites, right? No. I don't want to say collision sites, which yeah, we'll just say cosmic collision sites, right? They include sites in which, no. Evidence for cosmic collision. Okay, so that's fine. All right, so next part. The supposed Younger Dryas impact fails on both theoretical and empirical grounds. All right, that's I don't know, sorry. That's, I mean, I would feel really bad if I were a Younger Dryas impact theorist. Imagine you put in so much work and you come up with this hypothesis, and then someone else comes along and says, it fails both in theory and in real life. I mean, okay. I don't know, it's so mean. I don't know. Okay. Who adds that the popular appeal of the hypothesis is probably due to the way that it provides simple. Okay, so he's giving us another explanation. So this is the cause and effect, right? So why does it have popular appeal? Okay, so based on this, this guy is telling us something. So why does he say the YD impact theory has a popular appeal? The reason why it has a popular appeal is because it provides simple explanations. Thus, giant chunks of space debris clobbering the planet and wiping out life on Earth has undeniably broad appeal, right? So he's just saying, okay, I don't know, this is probably some kind of psychological argument, just because like people, okay, it has popular appeal because it's too simple. It's too easy to understand. So that's why people like it. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. Whereas no one in Hollywood makes movies about more nuanced explanation. Okay, so why is he talking about Hollywood? This is just an analogy, right? So, you know, movies that have broad appeal, they don't have nuanced explanations, right? They're all just really big concept and that kind of thing, right? Such as Clovis points disappearing because early Americans turned to other forms of a stone tool technology, as the large mammals they were hunting went extinct as a result of the changing climate, blah, 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 right? Okay, so these are an example of more nuanced explanations. So I just want to say, okay, potentially if they ask me a question about some of the more nuanced ones, I can look here, right? Okay, let's go to the next part. But impact proponents appear unmoved. Okay, so now we have the strongest attack. This one was by the guy named DM, but even after all of this, the proponents, the YD proponents, they are unmoved. Unmoved meaning, they don't care, right? They don't really care that this guy's making like a really strong attack on it. Like they're still not convinced by him. He say, we still stand fully behind the impact hypothesis, which is based on more than a confluence of dates. Why? Why? You should explain it. He says, radiocarbon dating is a perilous process, he contends, adding that the presence of, okay, so he probably has something to say about this. So I am still kind of curious as to why he won't change his mind. Contends adding that the presence of Clovis artifacts and mammoth bones just under the claimed iridium, nanodiamond, blah, 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 is a more reliable indicator. Okay, so he says radiocarbon dating is unreliable. And he's saying all of these, right? Clovis artifacts, mammoth bones, and under the iridium, nanodiamond, and blah, blah, blah. These things are more reliable. So he's saying radiocarbon dating is not good, right? And he's saying other evidence. You need to look at other evidence that an extraterrestrial event was responsible for their disappearance. Okay, so we have a lot of twists and turns here. Okay, so it's like describe the YD hypothesis and then say some specialists are against it, and then we have the strongest attack, and then we come back to the proponent saying, yeah, we're still not convinced, right? We still believe in the YD hypothesis. All right, so 43, best support for the claim that, okay, so this is easy, right? Remember this, we just need to find this claim within the passage itself, right? Support for the claim that the impact hypothesis is not the only possible explanation, okay? So I need to physically find this in the answer, okay? So whatever line reference I have, I'm going to say, hey, there are other explanations. There are other explanations for the sudden change in the climate, okay? So other explanations. So 8 to 12, other explanations. No, okay, so this one is just talking about the team's argument. I don't get to see if there are other arguments here, right? So I don't know. What's the next one? 15? Right, huh? 15, 17. Yeah, this is the ocean circulation one, yeah? So this offers another explanation. So this should be our answer. So B is the right one. 44, based on passage 1, which hypothetical discovery would provide the most support for the impact hypothesis? Okay, so we need to look at passage 1 and see what supports the what is that? What supports the YD hypothesis, right? Okay, well, we had some evidence. I didn't actually write it here, but there was new evidence, and then we have like debris, right? And saying it's like the foreign objects and that kind of thing, right? All right, whatever. So A says, an asteroid impact crater beneath the northern ice cap contains high levels of iridium and has been dated to well after the start. What? If it's after the start of the Younger Dryas, that would disprove them, actually, right? Because the impact needs to happen before. The impact needs to happen before the Younger Dryas, right? That's how it should happen. So A is obviously gone. Glass and carbon S's appear at multiple points in the geological record, but never in conjunction. Well, if it's not in conjunction with this, then it's suggesting otherwise. So we would need all that to happen simultaneously, right? So this one, no. Analysis of ice cores suggests that global temperature started declining approximately 13,000 years ago before the onset. Well, if the temperature started declining, it's probably not because of the explosion, right? It's offering just another explanation, so this is not it. High levels of O, which is rare. Okay, so this one's going in the right direction, but relatively common in asteroids. Okay, good. Are observed in the geological record from approximately yeah, there we go. So it's just saying we see more foreign objects, right? So D should be the right answer. 45, according to passage 1, the team of scientists believe that black carbonized material found in certain sedimentary layer was caused by which phenomenon following a cosmic collision? Okay, so I mean, I don't know. I need to go back to the passage, right? There's going to be black carbonized material was caused by something. So I'm just going to go back to the passages, probably in some of the detail sentences that I skipped, not a big deal, but I just need to keep in mind I need to look at I need to look for black carbonized material, and I need to look at a cause and effect, right? So something caused black carbonized material. So let's look for that. Where do I see that? Black carbon, black carbonized material. So I see it here, which the team says are the remains of wildfires. There you go. Okay. So I guess the black carbonized material is the result. We can say that's the result of wildfires. So the wildfires, and the definition of the wildfires include they swept across the continents after the impact. Okay, so I'm just looking for an answer choice that can potentially say that. So yeah, wildfire, C, right? 42, sharply. Okay, let's go back. Sharply contested. Okay, so we're talking about their disagreements, right? Sharply contested. Okay, so something like strongly. Yeah, strongly, of course. Strongly disagreed, right? So we want to describe some kind of disagreement between two groups of scientists. So strongly would be the best one here. M and his team relied on what evidence to challenge the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis? Okay, so what was that? This one, right? So it's saying, hey, they didn't fall in the time frame that you mentioned, right? Your timeline, the timing was off for all of these, for most of these collision sites, right? And then another thing that we say, so this is the first one, and then the second one is, it only has a popular appeal because it's too simple and people just understand it, right? So A says, a reevaluation of the dates assigned to sites. Yeah, dates, signs. This is good, right? I just want to make sure, since this is a line reference question, that I don't see this second explanation, the popular appeal or whatever. And I don't have that, of course. Okay, so A is the right answer, which means, okay, so I need to find this in the line reference, which is easy, right? So I'm going to be talking about the dates and the sites, right? So where do I find this? Well, I'm gonna look starting from D because it's not necessarily that like early on in the passage. So 62, yeah, here we go. Accuracy of the dating, right? Argues that accuracy of the dating is examined closely. Only 3 actually fall within the time frame. So here we go, right? So D would be the right answer for the line reference choice. Okay, more nuanced contrasts with what? All right, that's easy, right? More nuanced was the one, I mean, when he was mentioning the Hollywood movies or whatever, he's saying, you know, Hollywood movies are simple, and then, you know, there's also more nuanced explanation. So I'm gonna go with simple here. So that's the opposite word. What's the relationship? Okay, so passage 1 was about the Younger Dryas impact theory, right? And passage 2 was attacking that, basically. I mean, it had other, it presented evidence suggesting otherwise, right? Presents a critique of the central hypothesis. So yeah, this one is okay. Explains the scientific question. No, the two need to go against each other. It's not possible implications. This would mean passage 1 and 2 go along the same line, which is not true. Passage 2 identifies evidence in favor. No, right? Authors of both passages characterize the impact hypothesis as, okay, so I don't know actually. Passage 1 says it's, I wouldn't say plausible, but it would be kind of it's describing the Younger Dryas impact theory, but passage 2 is not, right? But I don't know how they would look at it. Unsupported, no, passage 1 would say it's pretty supported, and passage 2 would actually say there is some support. Interesting but difficult to conclusive. Okay, yeah, difficult to conclusively evaluate. This sounds a little bit okay. C says more appealing to the public than to, okay, we never had this comparison. I know that in passage 2 we also talked about some popular appeal and whatever, but still, what about in passage 1, right? Even if that's true, no. D, controversial. Yeah. I think actually controversial would be very intuitively the answer. Why? Because they're all doing this. You see, multiple studies say there's a Younger Dryas impact, but there are hypotheses pointing against that. And then this person says, hey, there's YD hypothesis, and some specialists think that theory sucks, but again, the YD proponent. So this is basically just rephrasing what we have as a structure in passage 1 and 2. What is that? Just opponent's point of view, or these people's point of view, and then people who go against that. Yeah, so that's the definition of controversial, right? So some people have something to say against that. Some people want to go along with that. If M's findings are accurate, okay, so this is DM, the guy who presented the strongest attack, right? So this guy, what can most reasonably be inferred about the glass and carbon S's? Okay, so what can we say about that? Okay, so what did this guy say? He said it's wrong, right? The dates are off. And it's just a simple explanation. Okay, let's take a look. A says they could have formed at a time other than the beginning of the Younger Dryas. Yeah, I mean, that would just say like it's not necessarily from that impact, which does not go against his belief, so this is okay. B says they are a product of the global. If it says there's a global cooling occurred. Okay, well, let's go and just check just for a second. Oh, last paragraph of passage 1, okay. Okay, so so debris formed by an extraterrestrial impact. So the debris came from the extraterrestrial impact, right? And he's saying this includes the spherules of carbon, right? So it's included here, right? So there was that impact, and then after that we have the debris, and this is what we're talking about, right? But the question is asking us, if passage 2 is true, Not passage 1, but if passage 2 is true, what can we say about this debris, right? So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it could be from a different time. B says they are a product of the global cooling. Well, does it necessarily need to be the global cooling? Why is it so specifically global cooling? I have no idea. Why would we mention this? They were found in highest concentrations at Clovis archaeological sites. So if they were Clovis sites, then it would actually go against passage 2's point of view. It would actually support passage 1's view, right? So not this one. They may have played some role in the tool technology. I don't know why. I don't know how this is relevant at all, because I mean, it just has to do with their tool. I don't know. So A would be the best answer here. Okay, so after this, let's go over some history passages, okay? So from the packet that I gave you guys. And yeah, let's take a break before that. How's this passage?
It's pretty straightforward.
Oh, so we don't need to do it?
No,
This one easy?
Oh,
Okay, so when it's talking about the Federalist, okay, what I doubt that the Federalist Papers are going to be on the test, but if they do, like, okay, well, first of all, what's the title? Federalist Papers. What what did the Federalists advocate for? What did they stand for? They wanted to make the United States a strong consolidated government, right? You guys remember this? Articles of Confederation was a weak form of government according to them, and they wanted to make a strong government, one America, right? That. And then it says, he discusses the potential effects of dividing the U.S. into several different nations. Okay, so is this going to be desirable for this guy? No, he's going to say they're gonna. It's not going to be good if we make them into different nations. We should be one nation together. That's what he's going to stand for. History, but it talks about. It starts off talking about the history of Great Britain, okay, is the one with which we are in general the best acquainted. We know about this, and it gives us many useful lessons. Okay, we can learn from Great Britain. That's what he's saying. We may profit by their experience without paying the price which it cost them. Okay, so same idea. We can learn from the history of Great Britain. Although it seems obvious to common sense that the people, okay, so something might seem obvious that the people of such an island, Great Britain, should be but one nation, yet we find that they are for ages divided into three, right? So they are divided. What is he going to say? He's going to say this is not good, probably. And that there were also constantly embroiled in wars with one another. Okay, so that's his first point. Right? So his fourth point is we can learn a lot from Great Britain. They're divided and negative consequences because of that, right? Notwithstanding their true interest with respect to the continental nation was really the same, okay? Yet by the arts and policy and practice of those nations, their mutual jealousies were perpetually kept inflamed, and for a long series of years, they were far more inconvenient and troublesome than they were useful and assisting each other. This is what he wants, but he's saying this is the undesirable effects. So that's the first idea. He's saying Great Britain's been divided, and that has not been good. Negative consequences. That's pretty much it. Should the people of America divide themselves into 3 of 4 nations, would not the same thing happen? Okay. Yeah, that's the point he's trying to make. So this was the first thing, right? He was talking about Great Britain divided, and that's going to have negative consequences. And then he says that's going to be the same for the U.S. The same applies to the U.S. Would not similar jealousies arise? Okay, so I just want to see where this point ends. And be in the same manner cherished, instead of being there joined, and envy and jealousy would soon extinguish confidence and affection. Okay, negative consequences. Hence, like most other bordering nations, they would always be either invoked in disputes. All right, it's that point, right? So this whole thing is just saying, yeah, the United States, they also will have negative consequences, right? Next part. The most sanguine advocates for 3 or 4 confederacies. Okay, so these advocates for these people want what? They want 3 or 4 confederacies. So these people want the nation divided. These are the people who want the nation divided. Cannot reasonably suppose that they would long remain exactly on an equal footing in strength, even if it was possible to form them so at first, right? So he's saying the advocates are wrong, right? I mean, they're not wrong, but you can't really think that they're all going to be in equal footing. If we divide it into 3 or 4 nations, they're going to be unequal, right? They're going to be unequal. So he's saying this to the advocates, and he's saying you cannot suppose, right? They cannot suppose the 3 different nations in equal footing, right? So equal footing cannot happen. And then it says, but admitting that to be practicable. But even if that was possible, yet what human contrivance, something made up by humans, can secure the continuation of such equality. So he's saying equality cannot continue. Even if this were possible, equal footing is not possible, but even if we do have equal footing, another thing that we need to say is true equality among the states is not possible. That's what he wants to tell these people. Independent of those local circumstances, so there's going to be local circumstances, right? So every situation is going to be unique to every location, which tend to beget and increase power in one part and to impede its progress in another, right? Okay, so one part, so if we're divided into 3 parts, one part is going to increase in power, and then another part is going to decrease in power, that kind of thing. It's going to impede that. Superior policy, and we must advert to the effects of that superior policy and good management, which would probably distinguish the government of one above the rest, and by which their relative equality in strength and consideration would be destroyed, right? We want to do this. Distinguish the government of one above the rest, and that, right? For it cannot be presumed, so this is wrong. Whatever happens before happens after this is wrong. The same degree of sound policy, prudence, and foresight would uniformly be observed by each of these confederacies for a long succession of years. For a long succession of years, we cannot have that sound, we cannot have all of this. So this cannot continue, is what he's saying. Okay, so whenever and from whatever causes it might happen, and happen it would, that any of these nations or confederacies should rise on the scale of political importance much above the degree of her neighbors, if that inequality happens, right? That's what he's saying. I'm going to rephrase this. This whole thing is saying, if the inequality happens, that moment would those neighbors behold her with envy and with fear, right? So the inequality is going to cause this, right? If the nations become unequal, right, in terms of their power, one nation is going to envy or fear the other. And is that desirable? No. Both those passions would lead them to countenance, if not to promote, whatever might promise to diminish her importance, and would also restrain them from measures calculated to advance or even to secure her prosperity, right? So this is like prosperity and that like negative consequences. That's what he's talking. Much time would not be necessary to enable her to discern these unfriendly dispositions. Okay, so it's not going to take much until these unfriendly dispositions arise, right? So there are going to be these unfriendly tendencies among each other in a relatively short amount of time. It's going to happen pretty soon. She would soon begin not only to lose confidence in her neighbors, but also to feel a disposition equally unfavorable to them. So, you know, the nation, right? The nation would not like its neighbors and not like itself. Distrust, it creates distrust, and by nothing is goodwill and kind conduct more steadily changed by invidious jealousies and just imputations, whether expressed or implied, right? So, I mean, okay, so it's going along the same point, and it's all rhetoric so far, right? The North is generally the region. Okay, so this you do need to take account of, though, right? So starting from here, now we're talking about something a little bit different. The North is generally the region of strength, and many local circumstances render it probable. So it's possible that the most northern of the proposed confederacies would, at a period not very distant, be unquestionably more formidable than any of the others. So he's saying the North is going to probably be stronger than the more southern parts, right? No sooner would this become evident than the northern hive would excite the same ideas and sensations in the more southern parts of America, which it formerly did in the southern parts of Europe. So in the case of Europe, that's a similar thing that's going to happen in the United States. Nor does it appear to be a rash conjecture that its young swarms might often be tempted to gather honey in the more blooming fields and milder air of their luxurious and more delicate nature. Okay, so rash conjecture. Conjecture is guess, right? So it's not going to be a wild guess. So he's saying it's not a wild guess, meaning something is predictable, right? What's predictable? The young swarms. What young swarms might be tempted to gather honey in the more blooming fields and milder air of their luxurious and more delicate, more delicate meaning weaker neighbors, right? So the north could become stronger, and then the north's swarms, right? So people in power might go to the south, right? Where they have milder air and blooming fields, right? That's the south, right? They can go there and they can exploit the south potentially, right? So it's pretty predictable. It's not a wild guess to say that the north can potentially take advantage of the south. That's what it's saying, right? Okay, they who well consider the history of similar divisions and confederacies will find abundant reason to apprehend. Okay, so there's going to be considerable reason to worry that those in contemplation would in no other sense be neighbors than as they would be borderers. So they're not going to be neighbors, but they're going to be borderers. What does that mean? They would neither love nor trust. Okay, so there's going to be none of this. Right? There's not going to be love, there's not going to be trust, there's going to be jealousy, mutual injuries. In short, that they would place us exactly in the situation in which some nations doubtless wish to see us, viz. Formidable only to each other. Okay, formidable only to each other as opposed to formidable to other nations. They're just going to be, they're just going to clash. Okay, so that was the whole point of the passage, right? So dividing the country is not good, right? We should be one America. It shouldn't be divided into several states or divided into several nations, right? Okay, so I want to go over some select questions here. Okay, so any question that was particularly tricky or difficult, let's go over them. So this is, okay. Do we have a line reference? No, we don't. Okay, so if we don't have a line reference, what it means is it should be pretty easy to see, first of all. I mean, Khan Academy, they have a tendency to ask stuff that should be line reference without any line references. But okay, so anyway, bordering nations. Competition of bordering nations. Where do we see this? That's the part that we just read towards the very end. Do you remember that? What did it say? Formidable only to one another, right? Not formidable as a nation to all the other nations in Europe and that kind of thing, but just formidable to each other. We're just going to fight each other. We're not going to be a threat to the world. We're going to be a threat to each other. That's what it was trying to say. So it diminishes their international relevance would be the answer, right? We don't talk about this. We don't talk about this, and this would be actually good, reduce their economic inequality. But I mean, he never said anything good about this. Damages their agricultural industries. No. Okay. Well, first of all, what's the consequence? I mean. There was this bit mentioned, damages their, I mean, there was one, were you confused because of D? Or no?
Yeah, it kind of.
Okay, so there was that bit. So you were probably confused because the young swarms are going to go to that part, right?
Yeah.
The milder temperatures and that kind of thing. But that was talking about what? The north. Right? The north, when it becomes stronger, they're going to take advantage of the south, right? But does that mean that's going to damage their industry? Not necessarily. They're going to take advantage of that or something like that, but not necessarily damage it. So that I don't know about that. And that's unrelated to competition. It's not necessarily about competition. That bit was about North becoming stronger, and then they take advantage of that. So it's not related to this idea. Right? Another one? Choice would most undermine the author's arguments about the relations of bordering nations. Okay, so we need to choose one that would effectively counter this guy's argument, right? So we would need to suggest that, hey, division and bordering nations, they could be pretty good. That kind of thing, right? So I'm looking for that. So two bordering nations remain equal to each other in power and are constantly at war. Okay, so this is something that the author would say is, yes, that supports my view. That's what I don't want, right? So this is not going to counter him because this is going to support his argument. Two bordering nations remain equal to each other in power and maintain, yeah, this is good. This is desirable, right? So it's not a negative consequence. So this is good. B. Okay, what's the next passage? And after that? What are the first words?
Guard with jealous attention.
Okay. How is this one? No comment?
It was fine.
Wait. You guys don't know the answers to the first passage, right? So, okay, I'll just tell you the answers for the first passage. Because we didn't grade it. The history of Great Britain, right?
Yeah.
A, B, D, C. D, B, D, C, A. B. You better have gotten everything right. Did you? Oh, you said it was easy. What happened? You said it was easy. Which one did you get wrong? 9. All right, so let's go back. Let's go to 60. Same ideas and sensations. All right, so ideas and sensations. So these two things are going along, which it formerly did. Okay, well, okay, this one is not necessarily full-on SAT style, but anyway, it's no sooner would this become evident than the northern hive would excite the same ideas in the more and southern parts. So it's comparing, you know, it's just like parts of Europe. There were ideas and sensations excited by certain, I mean, in a certain point in history. That's going to happen similarly in the United States. That's what he's saying, right? Okay, so which one did you choose? Oh, ideas and successes. Okay, so I mean, he's talking about like the ideas of, hey, we shouldn't be like one country. Hey, we're better than them. We hate them. That kind of thing, right? That's what he was talking about when he was talking about ideas and sensations. Okay? In no case, okay, Can you imagine any scenario in which the word sensation could be success? And think about this. Triumph and success, they're going to be the same thing, right? I don't know. Okay, any other questions? All right. Okay, just a second, please. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look. Passage 1 is by Patrick Henry. Passage 2 is by James Madison. Both were delivered during the Virginia Commonwealth debates. Okay, so it's a debate. So there's, number one, there's going to be a lot of rhetoric, and probably they're going to go against each other, perhaps. That's my initial guess, because, I mean, both were from the same debate. Two statements, okay, disagreed. Yeah, okay, they tell us over whether the Articles of Confederation, the current form of government at that time, should be replaced by the US Constitution. Okay, so this is the idea that we talked about before, right? So one person is going to be a Federalist, which would be James Madison, and one person is going to be an anti-Federalist. They're not going to want that thing happening. Okay, so let's take a look. Guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Okay, so we want to guard the public liberty, right? So this is something that he thinks is important. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel, right? So that jewel would be liberty, right? So, okay, rhetoric, right? So you want to find a point of repetition, and then you want to look for the next idea, right? Where does he move on to the new idea? Unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force. Here is the new idea, right? So he says, first idea that he mentioned is public liberty is important, right? Public liberty is important. We need to, it needs to be guarded, right? And then he says, unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force, right? Okay, so he says, we need force in order to guard this. Whenever you give up that force, you are inevitably ruined, right? So without this force, so let's just say this. In order to guard it, we need certain force. And without that force, that would be saying the same thing, right? Without that force, it would be the contrapositive, right? Without the force, can't guard it. I am answered by gentlemen that though I might speak for terrors, yet the fact was that we were surrounded by none of the dangers I apprehended. Okay, so I might speak of the terrors, but we were surrounded by none of the dangers I apprehended. What dangers are we talking about here? No. What are the terrors? What? I mean, no. It's easy. What are the terrors? So he speaks of these terrors, but other gentlemen say what? Hey, you don't have any of those.
Wait, what? I was supposed to say something.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, you need to read in relation to what we have.
Oh, public liberty.
Is a terror?
Oh, downright force.
Losing public liberty, probably,
Oh,
right? So, yeah, so he said, yeah, when I'm answered by gentlemen that though I speak of terrorists, like, okay, so why would he mention this right before he says this? And, like, this is the idea that he wants to convey here, right? So we need to guard this, and in order to guard this, we need that force, right? And like some people say, even though I talk about like losing public liberty and that kind of thing, we should guard it and we might lose it. These people say, no, there is no terror, right? It's okay, right? I conceive this new government to be one of those dangers. Okay, so those dangers that could affect public liberty, right? Okay, so that's how he presents it, right? So the new government is probably going to pose a threat to this, right? It has produced those horrors which distress many of our best citizens. We are come hither to preserve the poor Commonwealth of Virginia, if it can possibly be done. Okay, so he wants to preserve the Commonwealth of Virginia. Something must be done to preserve your liberty and mine. Yeah. So this is what he thinks is most important, right? He wants to guard liberty. The Confederation, the same despised government, merits, in my opinion, the highest encomium. It carried us through a long and dangerous war, right? So he says, this despised government. What is the despised government? The Articles of Confederation, right? So the Confederation, actually, it won us the war, right? It won us the war in that bloody conflict with the powerful nation. It has secured us a territory greater than any European monarch possesses. So what is this talking about? It's talking about the pros of the Confederation, right? So it's talking about the Confederation, and it's talking about how good it is, right? And shall a government which has been thus strong and vigorous be accused of imbecility and abandoned? Right? So he's saying, this is a rhetorical question, right? So he's saying it should not be abandoned. This good of a government should not be abandoned, right? Consider what you are about to do before you part with the government. Okay, so he's going to probably talk about the repercussions of such, right? If we abandon the government, okay, so take longer time in reckoning things. Revolutions like this have happened in almost every country in Europe. Similar examples are to be found in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, right? So he's talking about different examples here. Different examples. What does he say? And instances of the people losing their liberty. So these are examples of people losing their liberty, right? And then by their own carelessness and the ambition of a few. So if it should not be abandoned, and he talks about some historical examples. Historical examples of what? People losing their liberty. We are cautioned by the honorable gentleman who presides against faction and turbulence. Okay, so there's this person, the honorable gentleman. So what does this honorable gentleman say? Hey, no factions, right? Didn't we read that somewhere? Just the passage before this.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
It said, if it's divided into 3 nations, what happens? Something bad happens, right? It's that person, right? I mean, I'm not saying it's that exact person, but it's that argument, right? They say, if we're divided into 3 countries, that's going to be, that's going to be bad. We shouldn't do factions. And I acknowledge that licentiousness is dangerous and that it ought to be provided against, right? So he's saying, yeah, there needs to be some kind of order, right? Yeah, no order is bad. I agree. I acknowledge also concession, right? So these are all concessions. That the new form of government may effectually prevent licentiousness, right? Yet there is another thing it will as effectually do. It will oppress and ruin, right? Okay, so he talks about historical examples, and then he talks about the honorable gentleman. Honorable gentleman is the federalist argument, right? The federalist argument, and then he makes some concessions to this, right? He makes concessions saying, yeah, there needs to be some kind of order and that kind of thing, but what's his counter-argument? The counter-argument is it will oppress the people, right? The new kind of government. Okay, good? All right, let's take a look at passage 2. Before I proceed, so this person is going to go against this view. So similar to that last passage that we just read, right? So it's going to go along that vein. Before I proceed to make some additions to the reasons which have been adduced by my honorable friend over the way, I must take the liberty to make some observations on what was said by another gentleman. Mr. Henry, this is passage 1, right? He told us that the Constitution ought to be rejected because it endangered the public liberty. This is what passage 1 said, right? In his opinion, in many instances, give me leave to make one answer to that observation. Okay, so he's saying something to that. Okay, so what's the first thing that happens? He just acknowledges what's been said in passage 1, right? And then he says, let the dangers which the system is supposed to be replete with be clearly pointed out. Okay, so replete with something means what? If something is replete with something, it means it's full of it. Okay. So supposedly meaning according to you, right? According to you, this system is full of dangers, right? So according to you, this system is full with dangers. But tell me this. That's what he's saying. Hey, well, point that out then. Tell me what that is. Tell me what those dangers are, right? So that's his argument. So he's saying, hey, let's address the dangers. Okay? Let's address the dangers. If any dangerous and unnecessary powers be given to the general legislature, let them be plainly demonstrated. Yeah, so he's saying, yeah, if there are dangers, hey, tell us right now so we can address those, right? And let us not rest satisfied with general assertions of danger. So he's kind of suggesting this. Hey, you're just saying that, right? You're just making like a general assertion. You're just saying there's some kind of danger, but hey, can you please point that out for me? Which part is a danger in your mind, right? That's what he's saying. So he's implying that there's really no danger. You can't really pinpoint it. You're just scared, right? You just have a general sense that it's a danger, but you don't know what it is, right? Without examination, right? So that's what he's saying. So his counter-argument to passage 1 is, it's just like a general assertion of danger. Okay? If powers be necessary, apparent danger is not a sufficient reason. Yeah. So it will not cause something, right? It's not a sufficient reason. It's not a sufficient condition, right? So he's just saying, you just have a vague feeling, right? Apparent danger, right? You just look at it and it looks like danger, but you can't really pinpoint it. That's his point, right? He has suggested that. Okay, so he has suggested that. So this is going to be passage 1's point again. Licentiousness has seldom produced a loss of liberty. Okay, but the tyranny of rulers have always affected it, right? Okay, so he's saying the point here is tyranny affected the loss of liberty, right? So that's what passage 1 says. Passage 1 says tyranny produces loss of liberty, right? Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment. Okay, so if I say abridge, what does that mean? Yeah, like you guys read some abridged versions of a novel or whatever, like, yeah. But and if I say abridging, if I'm talking about the abridgment of rights or freedom, it means curtail them. It means you cut them short, right? You decrease them. That's what it means, right? So I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments. So it's not necessarily like a tyranny that affects it. There's more instances where gradual encroachments. Gradual encroachment produces loss of liberty. Then by violent and sudden usurpations, right? So he's saying, yeah, like you talk about some like tyranny or some kind of revolution or that kind of thing, but usually if you look at the course of history, usually stuff happens like really gradually over time, right? There's more instances of those, right? But on a candid examination of history, we shall find that turbulence, violence, and abuse of power by the majority trampling on the rights of the minority have produced factions and commotions, which, okay, so he's talking about like factions and stuff, which in republics have more frequently than any other cause produced despotism, right? Okay, so faction is going to produce that, right? So he's saying gradual encroachments do that, and it's not usually so he uses history as a selling point, right? So it's usually because of this, and usually like turbulence. I'll just use turbulence. If you look at history, if there's turbulence, that's going to lead to factions, and that's going to lead to some tyrannies and like despotism kind of thing. If we got over the whole history of ancient and modern republics, we shall find their destruction to have generally resulted from those causes being these, right? If we consider the peculiar situation of the United States and what are the sources of that diversity, right? Okay, so let's think about the United States now. Let's talk about the situation of the United States, of that diversity of sentiment which pervades its inhabitants. We shall find great danger to fear that the same causes may terminate here in the same fatal effects which they produced in those republics, right? So he's saying, like, yeah, you've seen all those, you've seen those countries where that happens, those bad things, the silent encroachments and that kind of thing, that might happen in the United States. This danger ought to be wisely guarded against, right? So he's saying we need to guard this danger, the silent encroachment, right? Factions are going to appear, and then that's going to be real despotism. That's going to be real loss of public liberty. But you can't really pinpoint which part in the Constitution, as suggested, is a danger. You can't really say that. That's his point, right? Perhaps in the progress of this discussion, it will appear that the only possible remedy, okay, here we go. Only possible, remember the only? What's the part that follows after the only? Is it the sufficient or is it necessary? Exactly. Wrong. You had a 50-50 chance. So the part that follows after the only is the sufficient condition, right? The possible remedy, I'm talking about the immediate one. So the possible remedy and means of blah, 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 blah will be found in the very system which is now exclaimed against. That very system refers to the Constitution, which is now exclaimed against as the parent of oppression, right? So exclaimed by you. So you say this Constitution is the parent of oppression, but that is the only possible remedy. So if it's a remedy, right? If we have any kind of remedy, then it's the U.S. Constitution. That's the only remedy that we have, right? So that's the argument that he's making. So without the U.S. Constitution, we don't have any kind of remedy. Good? Any questions? All right, so let's take a look at number 1. The central claim of the author of passage 1 concerning the Confederation is that this form of government has been historically, that's so easy. Okay, so what can we say about the Confederation in passage 1? Well, number 1 is really good, and that number 2 shouldn't be abandoned. Okay, so not insufficient, not oppressive, not dangerous. Okay, so the only one with the positive connotation is B, so B would be the right answer. Wow, okay, so I just need to look for a line reference that says the Confederation is successful. That's the only part that I need to look for, right? So where do I see this? Matt?
11 to 16.
11 to 16, okay, so here I see the Confederation merits highest, it carried us, it rendered us victorious, right? So there we go. So C is the right answer. All right, reckoning. Okay, so let's take a look. Line 20, reckoning. Take longer time in reckoning things. Okay, so he's saying, hey, think about it for a while. That's what he means. Think about it for a while. Huh? Take your time when you're thinking. Okay? Considering. Four, why do we use these examples? Okay, so these examples, I think I vaguely remember it. Passage 1, so passage 1's argument here, historical examples, right? So what were these examples? Like people losing their liberty, something bad happening, right? So, and that point was to support let's just read, okay? A, demonstrate why political revolutions are no, he's not saying it's inevitable, right? He's saying there are some bad instances that you can look for in history in which people lose their liberty. B, explain why the Confederation should be condemned. No, he loves the Confederation. So it's wrong. Illustrate the results of public carelessness and individual ambition. Yeah. So this yielded the loss of public liberty in certain historical instances. D, argue against the oppressive power of the majority. Well, no, I don't think this is mentioned in passage 1. I think this is mentioned in, I mean, not the careless part. But the idea of majority and minority, I think it's mentioned in passage 2, so it's irrelevant to passage 1. Number 5, passage 2 implies that the author of passage 1 does not. Okay, so what's the answer for this? Yuna, what did you choose for this? Yeah, what did you choose?
D.
Oh, interesting. I thought someone said this is easy.
No, I never said. I said it was funny.
Huh?
I said it was funny.
It was funny?
Funny.
It's not. Okay. Fine. Your definition of fine is, what's your definition of fine? Potentially get 2 or 3 questions wrong? Okay. Do you get it now that we went over the passage?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was this part, right? So his counter argument was, you just make a general assertion of danger. You don't actually pinpoint that. And I don't think you can either, right? You're just making like a general claim, right? That was the argument. So I'm just gonna look for the line reference for that. So starting from 34, let's take a look. He told us that. Well, it's impossible then. This is actually his point of view. We need to go to the counter argument, right? So the next one is probably from 36, right? Give me leave to make, let the dangerous blah, blah, blah be clearly pointed out. Yeah, so it's probably going to be somewhere around here, right? So it will be 36 to 39, right? Abridgment, right? Okay, so it's so this word is used a lot, especially when we're talking about rights or freedom, okay? Especially when we're talking about African Americans and that kind of thing, right? Black rights and that kind of thing. You guys remember? Yeah. So reduction. Opinions of U.S. citizens are, okay, so that's what passage 2. Passage 2 says something about opinions of U.S. citizens. Okay, I didn't write it down, but this is probably a pretty specific part that I need to go back to. But just based on what we have, we can just get rid of some ones that are obviously untrue. We never talked about positive or negative. We didn't say, oh, they're pretty optimistic. Americans are being optimistic. No, they're debating. It's not necessarily that divided. I don't know if it's illogical, trivial. All right, so I'm not sure. Okay, so let's go back to the passage. Opinions of U.S. citizens. So I'm just going to look for that. Okay, so look for the idea of So this is what I look for. Naturally, I just want to go to the part where he talks about the United States. So potentially, then we'll talk about some citizens. And what are the sources of that diversity of sentiment? Oh, there we go. Diversity of sentiment meaning what? Difference in opinions, right? Difference in opinions, difference in how people feel, which pervades its there we go. we have it here, right? So it would be difference in opinion. That's why it would be B divided. Author of passage 2 claims that public liberty is threatened by the majority's abuse of power, right? Okay, so that's, yeah. And then that could potentially lead to factionalism and that kind of thing. This claim most clearly contrasts with the claim in passage 2, passage 1, that public liberty is threatened by, okay, public, okay, so I need to go to passage 1 and say, and look for this, if I don't have a line reference question, right? So I'm just going to look for public liberty and public liberty threatened by something in passage 1. I'm going to go towards the beginning, I guess, of passage 1, right? Okay, so I don't see it in the beginning. Something that threatens public liberty. Oh, well, we did mention that the new government is one of the dangers. Yeah, I mean, that's it, I guess, okay? So, who chose D here? No one chose D? Oh. Pretty good. You weren't confused?
No.
Why?
Well, because it's A.
Well, I know it's A, but why? I mean, didn't we just say it's? Okay, fine. So, okay, potentially you can just look at government and go with this, but it's not that the new government is going to be oppressive. It's just that the new government itself is a threat. Okay, so that's proposed by some people, right? So that's why it's A. Okay, number 10, which situation is most similar to the one described in 62 to 66? Okay, 62 to 66. What's this situation? It will appear that the only possible remedy will be found in that very system, which is now, okay, so, wait, is this right? 62 to 66?
Yeah.
Okay, so, it was that, right? The only remedy, right, is found in this, right? But this system is the system that other people say is the parent of oppression. So that's kind of ironic, I guess. Like some people say, hey, that's going to oppress us, but actually that thing is the only remedy, right? Hey, that thing is poison, but that poison was actually the remedy. That was the only remedy. So that kind of situation, I guess, is what we're looking for. Oh yeah, that maybe I thought about this answer choice before. That's why I subconsciously said poison, I guess. Yeah, a patient complains about a medical treatment, but then finds it is the only possible cure. Yeah, we have this, right? It's the if it's the cure, then it's that, right? That medical treatment, right? So they say, hey, you know, that government's going to oppress us, but actually that was your only cure, right? So that's why A is the answer here. Authors of both passages would agree that the Constitution could provide. Okay, so A, of course, they would disagree, right? Passage 1 would say, no, that's going to abridge our liberty. Moral restraint. Okay, I don't know about this. Increase democracy. No, well, passage 1 would strongly disagree with that. Legal protection. Okay, not so sure about legal protection. Oh, so it's that, licentiousness. So when it was talking about licentiousness, like licentiousness being like real disorder, like you're just doing whatever you want, right? You're not morally restrained, right? But they both agree that it would provide a measure against licentiousness, right? So that's why it would be B, right? Can you guys wait just for a second? The fact that it's a speech, the history passage, how should you read it?
Find the main points.
Okay, I mean, go in with the expectation that there's going to be a lot of repetition points, right? Because in a speech, you know, you're talking when you're talking to like a group of people, you want to make emotional appeals, right? Remember when we talked about the essay, like there's emotional appeals and there's logical appeals and appeal to authority. Do you think someone's gonna come up to like go up to like give a speech and just make like a really logical argument, focus on making a logical argument? Is that smart? No. And you go up to speak and then you say, hey, according to a study, right? I mean, would you do that? No, right? You're not going to make logical or appeals to authority. Logical appeals or appeals to authority. You're going to make emotional appeals. And emotional appeals come from saying the same thing, but saying it in a different way. You need to make your point come across really clearly at first, and then you say that in a different way, right? You use an analogy. You use emotion, like you use your diction. You use connotative diction. That's how you make an emotional appeal, right? So focus on that when you're reading reading a history passage that happens to be a speech, okay? And know that there's not going to be many points. I mean, there might be more than you. I mean, I'm not saying there's going to be like 1 or 2 points, but I'm saying there's not going to be as many as some of the other passages, right? So don't be turned off by it, okay? And and again, if you have a science or social science passage that has a pretty explicit title, something you have a giveaway in your title, speed up. You can afford to do that, right? Okay. Do you guys have any questions before tomorrow's test? I feel like that was a pretty big giveaway for tomorrow's test.
Wait, are you saying that there's going to be a speech and there's going to be big?
I didn't say anything.
Wait, what's that?
I don't know.
I think there is going to be a speech.
I don't know. But what if there is? I mean,
You gave it away.
yeah, I did give it away, but
Why?
I just told you guys how to. I mean, these are stuff that I've always told you guys, isn't it?
Well, why explicitly now? Especially after getting the SAT.
Because I want you guys to remember that for tomorrow's test. Is that a problem?
Oh. Does that mean?
Well, I don't see what the problem is.
No, there's no problem.
I mean, those are stuff that I told you guys over and over again. Like whenever we're reading like a social science passage, focus on the title, build that expectation, go down with that expectation, use up that expectation, and then once you get to that point, there's going to be a new point. I mean, that's we've been talking about that forever, and that speech thing, that too, and like that's how you read a history passage in general. Okay, any questions? Okay, any questions about grammar or whatever? Or math? Okay. See you guys tomorrow.